I wish you were never born. The words didn't echo. They just hung in the frozen air of the Aspen chalet like icicles waiting to drop. My mother, Patricia, stood at the head of the dinner table, her chest heaving, her manicured finger pointing directly at my face. Beside her, my brother Tyler smirked, sipping the champagne I had paid for. My father, Gary, just stared at his plate, practicing his decades-long art of cowardice. There was no screaming, no crying, no filing an appeal for an apology. I looked at the three of them, the people who were supposed to be my family, and I felt something inside me finally snap. Not like a twig, but like a steel cable under too much tension. It was a clean, sharp break. Standing up required effort, but I managed it without a sound. I walked over to the coat rack, put on my parka, and picked up the heavy envelope I had placed on the sideboard earlier. Then, I opened the front door and walked out into the biting Colorado snow, leaving the warmth, the food, and the liabilities I used to call family behind me forever. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. 4 hours earlier, the chalet had felt like a different world. It smelled of roasted rosemary, expensive red wine, and the thick, suffocating perfume of delusion. We were sitting in a rental property that cost $3,000 a night. My mother, Patricia, had spent the first hour raving about the high vaulted ceilings and the view of the Aspen Mountains, praising my brother Tyler for securing the reservation. She didn't know that 3 weeks ago, the booking was about to be canceled for non-payment. She didn't know I had quietly wired the deposit from my personal savings account just to keep the family fantasy alive. To them, I was just a guest, a necessary accessory to the main event, the celebration of Tyler. Tyler sat at the head of the table, his cheeks flushed with bourbon. He was 32, unemployed, and currently branding himself as a crypto visionary. He wore a designer watch I knew was a replica, and talked loudly about paradigm shifts and disrupting the financial status quo. My father Gary nodded along, cutting his steak with the reverence of a disciple. He didn't understand a word Tyler was saying, but he understood the rhythm. Tyler spoke. Gary applauded. That was the contract. I sat at the far end of the table, nursing a glass of water. I wasn't just a daughter. I was an auditor observing a fraudulent company. I watched the way my mother refilled Tyler's glass before it was even empty. I watched the way she laughed at his jokes before the punchline landed. It wasn't love. It was worship. Then came the moment that set the stage for everything. I have a surprise, Tyler announced, standing up and tapping his glass with a fork. The room went silent. He reached behind his chair and pulled out a large, flat object wrapped in gold paper. "Mom, Dad," he said, his voice trembling with performed emotion. "I know things have been tight. I know you've sacrificed for my vision. But the coin launches in the third quarter, and I wanted you to be the first to see the returns." He ripped the paper off. It wasn't a bank draft. It wasn't cash. It was a piece of cardboard, cut from a packing box, with numbers written on it in black permanent marker. Pay to the order of Mom and Dad. Amount, $50,000. "This is a promissory note," Tyler said, beaming. "Once the liquidity pool fills, this is yours. Consider it a down payment on the life you deserve." It was a piece of trash. It had zero legal value. It was a promise made by a man who had borrowed $200 from me last week for gas money, but you would have thought he handed them the keys to the kingdom. Patricia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears, actual, wet tears spilled onto her cheeks. "Oh, Tyler," she sobbed. "My brilliant boy. I knew it. I knew you would do it." Gary stood up and clapped him on the shoulder, his eyes misty. "Proud of you, son. This is incredible." They passed the cardboard around like it was a holy relic. They didn't see a piece of recycling. They saw validation. They saw proof that their golden boy was gold, and their investment was sound. My hand rested on the heavy velvet envelope in my lap. Inside were 2 tickets for a luxury European river cruise, fully paid for, non-refundable, costing $7,200 of my actual hard-earned money. I looked at their weeping faces over the fake check. Then I looked at the real gift in my lap. And for the first time, the math didn't just feel unfair. It felt insane. I realized then that I wasn't competing with a brother. I was competing with a mythology. And you can't kill a myth with facts. You have to burn the temple down. Is that for us? My mother asked, her eyes finally landing on the envelope in my lap. Her tone wasn't hopeful. It was suspicious, as if she expected a bill. It is, I said. My voice sounded calm, but my pulse was thumping in my ears. I stood up and placed the velvet envelope on the table, right next to Tyler's cardboard check. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. Patricia picked it up. She liked heavy things. She equated weight with value. She slid out the glossy brochure and the itinerary. A European river cruise? She read, her brow furrowing. The Danube? 7 days? All expenses paid, I clarified. Flights, excursions, meals. For a split second, I saw a flicker of desire in her eyes. This was the trip she had talked about for 20 years. The trip she complained they could never afford because they were investing in the family. Then she looked at Tyler. He was staring at the brochure, his face darkening. The cardboard check in front of him suddenly looked very cheap and very brown. Wow, Tyler said, letting out a short, bitter laugh. Subtle, Madison. Real subtle. What do you mean? I asked. You couldn't just let me have a moment, could you? He shook his head, performing the role of the wounded genius. I share my vision for the future, and you have to slam down your corporate wallet to prove you're better than me. It's classic. It's a gift, I said. I bought it months ago. But you chose now to give it, Patricia snapped, dropping the brochure onto the table as if it were contaminated. Right after your brother's announcement, you always have to make it a competition. It's not a competition, I said, feeling the familiar heat rising in my chest. He gave you a piece of cardboard. I gave you a vacation. It's a promise. Patricia slammed her hand on the table. Tyler is building a legacy. You're just buying things. You think money is the only thing that matters because you have no imagination. You have no soul, Madison. I have no soul? I repeated. I'm the one who paid for this chalet. I'm the one who paid off your credit card debt last year. I'm the one who... Stop it, she screamed. Stop counting. That's all you do. You count pennies while your brother dreams of empires. She stood up, looming over the table, her face twisted into something ugly and raw. You want to know the truth? She hissed. You do it to humiliate him. You do it because you're jealous. You're jealous that he has a spark you will never have. You're just a glorified calculator, Madison. But he is special. She took a breath, and then she delivered the blow she had been sharpening for years. God. Sometimes I look at you and I wonder why I bothered. Maybe if you were never born, Tyler would have had the resources he actually deserved. Maybe if we didn't have to waste time raising you, he would be a millionaire by now. The silence that followed was absolute. Here is the truth about the golden child. He is a mirror. Patricia didn't love Tyler because he was successful. She loved him because he was a projection of her own grandiose delusions. Admitting he was a failure would mean admitting she was a failure. And I was the reality check. I was the evidence that hard work and facts existed. And because I represented reality, I had to be destroyed to keep the fantasy alive. She needed to devalue me to protect her own fragile ego. The realization washed over me, cold and clarifying. I wasn't fighting for her love. I was fighting for her to admit she was wrong, and she would burn the world down before she did that. I looked at the brochure on the table. Then I looked at her. Okay, I said softly, and that was when I walked out. I drove until the chalet was a glowing speck in the rearview mirror, then kept driving until the mountains swallowed it whole. I checked into a generic hotel in downtown Aspen, the kind with beige walls and paintings of horses that looked like they were drawn by someone who had never seen a horse. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I stared at my phone. It was vibrating so hard it was slowly sliding across the nightstand. Gary, where did you go? Your mother is hysterical. Come back and fix this. Tyler, voice note. Are you serious right now? You walk out because mom told you the truth? Grow up, Madison. You ruined the vibe. And by the way, the landlord just texted about the balance. Since you canceled the card, we're locked out of the amenities. Fix it, now. Patricia, you are selfish. You have always been selfish. Come back here and apologize to your brother. I listened to them. I read every single word. And for the first time in 28 years, I didn't feel the urge to obey. Laying back on the stiff hotel bed, I stared at the ceiling. The silence in the room was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was honest. Why did I pay for the chalet? Why did I pay off the credit cards? Why did I buy the cruise? I had told myself it was because I was successful. Because I was generous. Because that's what family does. But lying here, in the cold light of a hotel lamp, I admitted the truth to myself. I was paying a tax. I was paying a subscription fee for a version of love that I wasn't even receiving. I was buying tickets to a show where I wasn't even in the cast. I had spent my entire adult life trying to purchase my mother's approval, hoping that, if the check was big enough, she would finally look at me the way she looked at Tyler. Hope is a trap. It's the most dangerous thing in a toxic family. It keeps you coming back. It keeps you writing checks. It keeps you believing that this time will be different. This time they will see me. This time I will be enough. But hope is a lie. They don't want me to be enough. They want me to be useful. And the moment I stop being useful, I stop existing to them. I sat up. The movement was slow, deliberate. I felt lighter, as if I had just undergone surgery to remove a tumor I didn't know I had. Replying would be engaging, and engagement was over. Instead, I opened my banking app. Then I opened my laptop. I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to finish it. The screen of my laptop glowed in the dim hotel room, the only source of light in my new world. I logged into the family's shared cloud drive. I had set it up years ago to help them manage expenses, but I had retained admin access. At the time, I thought I was being helpful. Now, I knew I was gathering evidence. I wasn't Madison the daughter anymore. I was Madison the forensic accountant. I started with the bank accounts. My parents' joint checking, savings, and the retirement fund I had helped them set up. The numbers didn't make sense. According to my calculations, they should have been comfortable. I had paid off their credit cards 11 months ago. I covered the mortgage on their primary residence in Florida. Gary's pension was steady, yet the balances were hovering near zero. I drilled deeper. There were withdrawals. Massive ones. October 14th, wire transfer, $12,000. November 2nd, cash withdrawal, $8,500. December 10th, wire transfer, $25,000. I traced the destination accounts. They were obscured, routed through a generic LLC called Visionary Holdings. I ran a quick search on the state business registry. Registered agent. Tyler. My stomach turned, not from shock, but from confirmation. Tyler wasn't just living off them. He was bleeding them dry. But where was the money coming from? Their savings weren't deep enough to sustain this burn rate. I pulled up their credit report, and there it was, a line of credit I didn't recognize. A home equity line of credit, or HELOC, opened 3 years ago on their Florida home. Limit, $150,000. Current balance, $144,000. Status, default. I stared at the screen. They had leveraged their home, the home they claimed to own outright, to fund Tyler's crypto empire, and they hadn't made a payment in 6 months. I clicked on the document view for the loan application. I needed to see who signed it. There was Gary's signature, shaky, hesitant, and there was Patricia's, bold, looping. But then I saw the power of attorney document attached to the file. It authorized Tyler to act on their behalf for investment purposes. The date on the document was 3 years ago. The notary stamp looked legitimate. But when I zoomed in on the signatures, I saw it. Patricia's signature on the power of attorney didn't match her signature on the loan application. It was too smooth, too practiced. And Gary's? Gary never signed his middle initial, but on this document, it was there. Gary L. Thompson. Tyler hadn't just borrowed money. He had forged their consent to liquidate their future. I sat back, the cold light of the screen washing over me. They weren't just broke. They were insolvent. And the crypto returns Tyler promised? They didn't exist. The money was gone. I checked the foreclosure status on the county clerk's website. Auction date, tomorrow, 10 a.m. The house, their home, their safety net, the only asset they had left was being sold to the highest bidder in less than 12 hours. I could call them. I could scream. I could warn them. But then I remembered Patricia's voice. I wish you were never born. If I was never born, I wouldn't be here to save them. I looked at the buy now option on the bank's distressed asset portal. I had the savings. I had the liquidity. I had been saving for my own house for 5 years. I didn't call them. I clicked bid. I stared at the confirmation screen. Transaction successful. Pending deed transfer. I didn't feel victorious. I felt numb. I had just spent $144,000, my entire life savings, to buy a house I didn't want, belonging to people who despised me. But it wasn't about the house. It was about the power. For my entire life, the dynamic had been simple. They held the power, and I begged for scraps. They held the approval, the love, the family status, and I paid for the privilege of proximity. Now, the dynamic had flipped. I held the deed. I held the debt. I held the roof over their heads. I spent the next hour printing documents. The forged power of attorney. The HELOC statements showing the transfers to Visionary Holdings. The foreclosure notice. And finally, the new deed, listing Madison Thompson as the sole owner of the property at 422 Oak Creek Lane. I put everything into a thick, manila envelope. Then I went to bed. When I woke up, the sun was hitting the peaks of the Rockies, painting them a deceptive, cheerful gold. I showered, dressed in my sharpest suit, the one I wore when I had to tell CEOs they were being audited, and drove back to the chalet. The driveway was quiet. The rental car was still there. They hadn't left. Of course they hadn't. They were waiting for me to fix it. Walking up to the front door, I didn't knock. I used the key code I had set up when I paid the deposit. The living room was a mess. Empty wine bottles, half-eaten food, the debris of a celebration that had soured. Tyler was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Patricia and Gary were sitting at the kitchen table, nursing mugs of coffee, looking haggard. They looked up when I entered. Finally, Patricia said, her voice raspy. She didn't look relieved. She looked annoyed. Do you have any idea how worried we were? You just disappeared, and the landlord has been calling non-stop. We're locked out of the ski lift pass system, Gary added, his tone accusatory. It's embarrassing, Madison. Tyler stirred on the couch, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. Oh, look who decided to show up. Did you come to apologize? I didn't say anything. I walked over to the table. I have something for you, I said. Patricia rolled her eyes. If it's another vacation we can't use, spare us. It's not a vacation, I said. I placed the manila envelope on the table. It landed with a heavy thud, the sound of paper and consequences. It's a housewarming gift. A housewarming gift? Tyler laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. For what house? We're losing the house, Madison. Or didn't you check the foreclosure listings while you were busy sulking? Open it, I said. Patricia reached for the envelope. Her hands were shaking slightly, but whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. She tore open the flap and pulled out the stack of papers. The first thing she saw was the foreclosure notice. She gasped. We know, she snapped, throwing it down. Why are you showing us this? Are you trying to rub it in? Keep looking, I said. She flipped the page. It was the power of attorney document. The one with the forged signature. "What is this?" she whispered. Her eyes darted to Tyler. "Tyler, this is your handwriting." Tyler sat up straighter, the smirk vanishing from his face. That's just standard paperwork. For the investment strategy. You guys signed it years ago." "I never signed this," Gary said, grabbing the paper. "That's not my signature. That's Gary L. Thompson. I never sign with my initial." "And the HELOC," I said, pointing to the next document. $144,000. Drained. "Where did it go, Tyler?" "It went into the market," Tyler shouted, standing up. "The market crashed. It wasn't my fault. I was trying to double your money." "You gambled their home," I said, my voice cold. "You stole their equity, and you lost it all." Patricia looked at Tyler, her face pale. "You told us the house was paid off. You told us the investment money came from your crypto profits." "I was going to pay it back," Tyler yelled. "I just needed more time. Madison is twisting everything." "I'm not twisting anything," I said. "I'm just reading the receipts." "Look at the last page," I told Patricia. She turned to the final document. The deed transfer. Property address. 422 Oak Creek Lane. Grantee. Madison Thompson. She read it, then she read it again. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with confusion. You bought the house?" "I bought the debt," I corrected. "I paid off the bank this morning. The foreclosure is stopped." "Oh, thank God." Gary exhaled, slumping in his chair. "Oh, thank God. Madison, I knew you would fix it. I knew you wouldn't let us down." Patricia let out a sob of relief. "We can pay you back," she said, wiping her eyes, slowly. "But we'll pay you back. Thank you, Madison. We're sorry about last night. We were just stressed." I looked at them. They thought this was a rescue mission. They thought I had just saved them so they could go back to their lives, back to worshiping Tyler, back to treating me like an ATM. "You don't understand," I said. I pulled another paper from my pocket. "This is a lease agreement. And this," I handed her a separate notice, "is an eviction warning." "What?" Gary asked, his smile faltering. "I own the house now," I said. "You are my tenants. And because you have no income, no savings, and a history of financial irresponsibility, I'm giving you 30 days to vacate." "You can't do that," Patricia screamed. "It's our home." "It was your home," I said, "until your son gambled it away. Now, it's my asset. And I don't invest in liabilities." They had spent years acting like royalty, treating me like the help. But their power wasn't real. It was rented. It was funded by debt and delusion. And the moment the money ran out, the hierarchy collapsed. Without the house, without the money, they were just two broke people who had bet on the wrong child. "You're evicting us?" Tyler asked, his voice trembling. "Your own family?" "I'm evicting the people who told me I should never have been born," I said. "Consider it a late birth." I turned to leave. "Madison, please!" Patricia wailed, grabbing my arm. "Where will we go?" "We have nowhere." I looked down at her hand on my sleeve. I gently removed it. "Maybe you can stay with Tyler," I said. "I hear his coin is launching in the 3rd quarter." I walked out of the chalet and didn't look back. I heard Patricia screaming my name. I heard the sound of something shattering, maybe a wine glass, maybe their entire reality, but I didn't stop. I got into my rental car, locked the doors, and drove away. The fallout was swift and brutal. Patricia tried to fight the eviction, claiming elder abuse, but the paperwork was ironclad. Tyler fled to Costa Rica a week later, allegedly to scout locations, but really to avoid the fraud investigation the bank opened after I submitted the forged documents. Gary just folded. He moved into a small apartment paid for by his pension, finally separated from the delusions that had kept him afloat. I didn't visit them. I didn't send cards. I didn't check in. 6 months later, I was sitting in my own home, a modest condo in Denver that I had bought with the money I didn't spend on saving them. The morning sun was streaming through the window. illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was quiet. There were no frantic texts demanding money. No guilt trips about missed birthdays. No suffocating dinners where I had to audition for love. I opened my drawer and pulled out the envelope containing the river cruise tickets. They had expired last week. $7,200, wasted. I looked at them for a long moment. Then I walked over to the shredder. I fed the tickets into the machine, listening to the satisfying whir as the glossy paper was chewed into confetti. It wasn't a waste. It was the price of admission to my new life. I walked to the window and looked out at the mountains. They were vast and indifferent, beautiful in their permanence. I realized then that family isn't about blood. It's about safety. It's about respect. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to evict the people who treat your heart like a rental property. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with clean, cold air. I was born. I was here. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone an apology for it.